back. Well, yes, it may be a never-ending debate, this fuel subsidy matter, depends on how it goes. I mean, we use this product every single day of our lives. But yes, we've got both persons you've seen there joining us this morning to weigh in on the current matter. Honorable Nkoyo Toyo is the chief spokesperson and co-convener, Labour and Civil Society Front. She's a former Nigerian ambassador to Ethiopia, a former member of the House of Representatives. And sitting beside her, Dr. Diakpo Obire, member of the APC and President, Good Leadership Advocacy for Africa. Thank you both and good morning for coming on today.
Thank you very much.
Let me start with you, Honourable, but not on this fuel subsidy matter. The House, the National Assembly, they'll be having valedictory session. The reps today, Senate much later, and of course there'll be the proclamation, which will happen then the 10th Assembly. But at the moment, there's this back and forth as to the leadership. How will they emerge? Who will they be? So bother about any of these scenarios as they play out?
It's a good question, actually. When you think about the way the National Assembly itself works, the inside workings of that body, in the end, really, the business of the National Assembly is about the business of the National Assembly and the way it operates. Oftentimes, they look behind or look over their shoulders to see what government is doing and to sort of work closely with government. And the point you make about should the Nigerian people be concerned, to the extent that the Nigerian people want to see the holding of governments more accountable for the things they do. One of the areas which I think over time the National Assembly hasn't done work sufficiently around is the issue of oversight. How do we hold government? I mean, I was just listening to you before I came on screen talk about the scandal with the Nigeria Air. Question is, how did we wait until we got to this point? This thing was announced, the Nigeria Air was announced, I think in the first 4 years of Buhari or something like that, and monies were allocated in the budget, of which the budget we in the National Assembly knew everything about. So the point about it is back to where the Nigerian people come in. What the Nigerian people want to see is a more assertive National Assembly, not one that is being dragged around by the executive. And that doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything wrong with the assertion of the rights and voices. And to that extent, therefore, let the leadership be a function of the capacities of those who you bring on board to be able to ask the questions which they need to ask in due season.
I hear some of your colleagues argue that they say citizens often perhaps interchange assertion and being confrontational with holding government accountable. So for you, where do we draw the line?
Again, go back to the Air Nigeria case. I mean, it's better to work with the tangibility of something you can deal with. How accountable were they? To what extent did they ask the right questions? This was a budgeted activity. To what extent did they? And then at the end of your 4 years, you call it a scam, you call it a fraud. Where were you? Excuse me. I guess this tells the story. It tells the story to the Nigerian people, and of course you will see that in almost every aspect of what we are talking about today, where we continue to see a failure on the part of the National Assembly. And I hope the 10th Assembly, given the contestations that are going on in terms of where the leadership emerges and who becomes the leader of both chambers, we will begin to see an understanding and a realization that there is also so much that government itself can do to determine for that body where it goes with its business.
Well, Dr. Berry, you could respond much later if you will, but let me get on to the fuel subsidy matter, because right now, of course, there will always be different perspectives. Should we? How should we, if we have to? What do you make of where we are on this matter right now?
I think we need to lay certain things down. Should we? It's no longer the option. It's no longer a question. I don't think there is anywhere you go into in Nigeria today and people say, oh, keep subsidy in the form that it is. I need to make the point, in the form that it is. And I think that is the anxiety of which anybody coming to this government would have in trying to deal with a problem that has become, over time, endemic. It's not the first time government has tried to take the subsidy out of the regime of things that it's doing. It's got a long history. I was serving on the Mantle Cushioning and Palliative Committee when Obasanjo was president, so I'm not a visitor to this journey. And the process of uncoupling, that whole process had started right from the time of Obasanjo, with very extensive efforts at having a situation which addressed the needs of a broader section of Nigerians. It has always been the question of how do you do it without creating a lot of harm and a lot of hurt. That has always been the question. That has always been the question. But the newer question that has arisen from all that we have seen over time is that what is subsidy? Whenever we talk about subsidy, we're talking about PMS. But like Fernanda said on your channel the other day, subsidy is much more than PMS. So if subsidy is gone, I would like to have a further understanding of the pronouncement and proclamation made by Mr. President that subsidy is gone, because I want to understand, is it just the PMS subsidy or the many other subsidies where we see AMCON and other establishments of government coming to support private businesses and keeping them afloat in order as to create some equilibrium in terms of the pricing that exists in the system. But let me say what we, the civil society groups, have come to place on the table. We are saying that subsidy, yes, as it relates to PMS and as it relates to every other fraud and scams, and I'm not using my language, I'm using the language of the Vice President, who said that there is a cartel, a very dangerous cartel. He's pointed to the problem. The problem is the cartel. The problem are the people who have refused to make these things accessible. In the first place, we always knew that the idea of a subsidy was to keep prices at a certain level and make them affordable to the generality of people. At what point did we stop being a caring country in which the moment we wanted to deal with the problem of the economy, we went for the weakest link? And then we are saying, to hell with the market women. I'm happy the first daughter is the president of all market women. She hasn't sat down to tell us Nigerian women in the markets what's going to happen to the cost of food with the changes in prices. Who's going to bear the cost? How is it going to impact? These are the questions which we have not yet heard. You put a proclamation before you then begin to think of the content. I've seen the TUC-NLC agreement. It doesn't concern those of us who are sitting in the market and trying to buy food. Where are the parameters where the rest of community and society, who are those labor is negotiating for? Less than 10% of the Nigerian population are in organized labor. So what happens to the rest of Nigerians? I am a woman. I am a woman of a certain demography in Nigeria. Most women of my age who have finished work as civil servants have not collected their gratuity, they have not collected their pensions, they don't have access. What is the market going to mean? What is the cost of livelihood going to mean to them? We must be a country that cares for its citizens. The fact that you attack the very element that speaks to the citizens first, and you want to make the citizens pay for a fraud that has been perpetrated. You haven't even touched the fraudulent actors. You haven't even asked questions. How did they come up with their prices, for instance?
So, Dr. Berry, and do you consider those valid asks?
Chamberlain, you see, when you talk about the issue of subsidy, it's a very serious issue. Now, this is one fear that the Nigerian people and even the government have been facing over the years. It's been decades, right from the time of the military till now. Our oils have been stolen. Subsidy came to be. Government is trying their best to see what they can do to make life easy for the citizenry. But unfortunately, we have a group of people who just feel that this is an opportunity to enrich themselves. And the creation of that subsidy payment is the reasons why you see a lot of corruption and a lot of fraudulent activities around this whole exercise. Without subsidy, you can't hoard your product. Without subsidy, you cannot divert product. Without subsidy, you cannot organize yourselves in a way that you start having different figures flying everywhere. NNPC will tell you we have 98 million liters according to what the customs said sometime last year, that 98 million liters is being consumed by Nigerians daily. And the Nigerian mainstream and downstream regulatory agency counters that figure last year and said it is 66.8 million liters that Nigerian consumes. So the question is, why are we having these figures? It's because people are gaining from it. People are eating from it. So you cannot actually say today that this is the right figure that the Nigerian people consume of PMS daily. But as it is, May 29th, 2023, came a new Nigeria, which simply means the pronunciation of the president simply shows that we have come to reality. We have come to terms with reality that our lifestyle can no longer be sustained by the government. I am buying fuel 195 naira as at.
Yeah, but civil society are asking, yes, they're not opposed. Quite a number of people not opposed to removal of subsidy. But the question is, has government told us, for instance, how much are we saving? What are we going to do with this? Who are the people responsible for all of these things? Shouldn't the president or somebody in government be talking to Nigerians about all of this?
Now, there's something you must know. If you start running around a hole, then you are not serious about solving a problem. Now the president took the boldness and said, this fear, I'm taking it off today. Not because he just wants to put pains upon Nigerians, but he made it clear before he even made the pronunciation that the budget he inherited, there is no provision for subsidy. Now, with that is a stepping stone to his pronunciation. And be that as it may, the people, like the civil society, what they are talking about is right. But the issue is, you cannot take away the pain before treatment. You have to remove that pain, that thing that is paining you. You take it off, then you now start the treatment. Now, I want to say that many Nigerians are too quick to start complaining about this. We are all facing this. Let's be realistic. This is total and final removal, that is a full deregulation of the downstream sector. Now, the prices, there will be opportunity. The market is open right now. It's an open market. So investors can come in. If you want to import fuel, you import fuel. Yeah. Now, the government...
You didn't answer the question.
No, the government, I'm coming there. The government is...
I thought you said if we're going around the holes, we'll be...
Listen, the government is putting in place what will cushion the effect down. Right now, negotiations are going on between the government, NLC, like...
So they remove the subsidy bill, then much later, and you start thinking about what you're going to put in place.
No. Listen to me.
I thought that's what you said.
No, listen to me very carefully. Listen to me very carefully. If you don't take away pain, you can't solve it. So the monies that are going to be saved from subsidy are going to be put into things that will further cushion the effects on the people. This is what government is trying to do. We have been painting it all this while. We painted subsidy with Shopee, we painted subsidy with NAPEP, we painted subsidy with traders' money, money transfer, but there's no result.
So what is government going to do now?
Now, there's the possibility of making things work.
Possibility?
Yes, possibility, 100% of making things work for Nigerians. Salaries are going to be increased. The wages are going to be increased. And that is the discussion that is going on between
nobody has told me my salary will be increased.
Yes. Let's not go there. But let me whilst your analogy about pain and treatment might be valid, people will tell you that oftentimes when you go to a doctor, they will tell you about a treatment plan. They will tell you what they're about to do. They'll tell you of your patient. This is a diagnosis. This is how we intend to go about it. We'll have a surgery. Of course, you will be in pain after surgery, and then they will give you pain meds, etc., etc. And they will tell you there will be a plan before treatment or surgery or whatever it is commences. That's what usually happens. In this case, it hasn't happened. In this case, surgery has just been done, perhaps even without anesthesia. The question now is, what exactly is the plan? What was the plan all along for treatment? That's the question that Nigerians are asking. What did this government have in place? That it seems to have done this without a concrete plan in place to tell the people what next. What next?
Okay. Now, you talked about a surgery, a painful surgery.
No, it was you who talked about it.
No, you talked about a painful surgery.
I'm building on your analogy.
No, you also need to understand that when a surgery is conducted, before it's conducted, there are diagnoses, right? And for you to know what exactly is wrong with the patient. Now, we understand what is wrong with Nigeria economy, revenues, and all that. We are taking it out. Then it takes time for you. These are not things you buy off the shelf. You cannot say the solution is going to be buy off the shelf. So the government is putting in place gradually things that we just came in. The government just came in. It's barely a week. So certainly plans are going on as we speak.
So the plans are coming after.
Exactly, they are going to come after.
Let me come to you, ma'am. You have also admitted that there were no easy answers. We've been here way too long. We knew what the problem was. We knew what the solution needed to be, but governments have been reluctant because they know that the solutions were not going to be easy. Given where we are, right now we knew that we're also in dire straits. If we were to go by the words of the GCEO of the NNPC, we have been borrowing, we have been in deficit to funding subsidy. Did we really have the luxury of time to say, oh, let us sit and wait and plan something, knowing that marketers could begin to hoard this product and refusing to sell because they know that imminently subsidy was going to go anyways? Thank you. You make a good point, absolutely. It just takes me back to the point that the former president, Goodluck Jonathan, made at the end of his tenure in government, where he said, my winning an election, or so, I don't have the exact words here, is not worth the loss of any life. The point is, this is going to hurt Nigerians very, very badly. Very, very badly. People are eking a living already. Terribly. And this is like almost 175% increase from what you read in one of the newspapers this morning. The same newspaper you read this morning says Lagos has moved from 488 to 530 just this morning. Do Nigerians deserve, ordinary Nigerians, of which 133 million of them live in multi-dimensional poverty? Do they deserve this? Somebody else scams you at another level. Then you make another person pay for that scam. What we are paying for as a country is not the problem of subsidy as a strategy. It's the problem of the scam that has been layered on subsidy. You have a strategy. Let me tell you something. When you change and say, okay, no longer, and you are replacing it, first of all, most of the actors who will be involved in that replacement plan are almost the same people who had been involved in the scam itself. So you are replacing one problem with another problem because you haven't touched the problem that created the scam in the subsidy in the first place.
But we've seen attempts to touch that problem. I mean,
what is the attempt? If you ask me,
let me start with. I mean, I didn't follow very closely what the Obasanjo government tried to do. What we saw was that the most it could do was reduce the amount it was paying on subsidy by increasing the price of fuel, and even that was met with stiff resistance. The first time perhaps we saw that government tried to take it away, or let me say I saw, was in 2012 during the Jonathan administration when it tried to remove subsidy. There was a big campaign across the country. We remember then the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Petroleum Resources, the Governor of the Central Bank holding parleys with organized private sector, justifying why subsidy had to go. Eventually, it was removed without ceremony. I think it was the 1st of January 2012 when subsidy was removed, and people took to the streets. There was Occupy Nigeria protests. And in response to that, the National Assembly decided to take it upon itself to hold a probe. For months in front of national television, we saw marketers being invited, and this, the claims that they had been scrutinized in an attempt to tackle the corruption. We eventually saw what happened with that. Even members of the National Assembly didn't appear to be sincere, as the chairman of that committee eventually went down for fraud. But nonetheless, the meat of what it was that they came up with, the investigations which were conducted, were there for all to see. It still did not solve the problem of the corruption. It has continued unabated as we speak. The NNPC says we're owing it 2.3 trillion naira. So the question is, did we really have the luxury of time to continue to say, oh, let us plan a phased removal of subsidy? Looking at just the response of marketers a day after the president made his speech about subsidy being gone and the immediate hoarding of this product.
What I hear you saying is that we have the luxury to continue with corruption. I'm sorry, that's the way I hear it. My point here is that it is not the ordinary Nigerian who has less than 20,000 naira a month who is the one to pay for this. If they must pay for it, they must know why they are paying for it. As it is, they don't know why. You have a template that says pay 500, pay 488, pay whatever. Nobody has sat down to say, if you pay this 500 naira, 200 of it is going to go directly back to you. That's why you are being asked to pay. And then they can see how they are getting benefits from what they are losing and being made to pay for. You see, the problem in the country right now is that what the new Nigeria, as he calls it, has told us is that the people don't matter. Because you went for the easiest and the cheapest option, which was punish the people. Everything else that has cost the subsidy, everywhere in the world, subsidy is used. Everywhere. Nigeria continues. When we finish with the PMS subsidy, they're going to see subsidy in agriculture, the scams that are going on in several other subsidy sites. Elena was here on your television and talked about it. We are delaying the point in question. Nigeria is a crime scene where crime is happening at every point in time. What I expect Mr. President to tell us is, how are we going to deal with the perpetrators?
So I also recall, just before we go to Lagos, I know my colleagues are waiting, but we also saw the prosecution of marketers. I think is very important. Some marketers were prosecuted. I think one or two, went to jail for it, or maybe they did a plea bargain, but it didn't stop the fraud. It would seem that nobody learned anything.
So there's no new Nigeria.
So
the old Nigeria.
It didn't stop the fraud. So really, I do not know. You asked the question, when did we become a country that stopped caring? And the question is at all levels. As individuals, as corporates, as government officials, that question will be valid all around, because even with the prosecution of people, it didn't seem to stop the fraud. So looking at where we currently are, you have also said the question is not about whether subsidies should go. It's about how it should go. So do we really have the luxury? That's the question I'm asking. Did we have the luxury of time to plan? That's the question I'm asking you, Mom.
Well, that takes you back to the point which everybody's making, that the decision. First of all, when Buhari left, he said this will run until the end of June. So everybody expected that subsidy will go by July. Now we hear that he left without leaving money to cover the subsidy for June or whatever. We're just reading about these things. We're just hearing about these things. Why should we believe the things we just hear, by chance? We need to hear from government in a formal and proper manner what exactly is going on.
All right,
and we haven't heard it.
Okay, let's bring in our colleagues from Lagos. They've got questions for you. Go ahead, guys.
Thank you, Chamberlain. Let me begin with Dr. Bure. Perhaps one of the major challenges a number of people will have, as you've heard the ambassador speak about, is in the mode of communicating whatever policy government has to its people all across the length and breadth of the country. As she said as well, just about 10% of the workers of Nigerians are recognized in the organized private sector. But here we are in a situation where 90% of others, informal sector mostly, rural areas and all of those people, they have to bear the same consequence as those people in urban Nigeria. So in terms of communication, the deed has been done. Efforts have been made all across to ensure that things stabilize some way or the other. But how should we be communicating this to Nigerians in a way that they will accept this, what government calls temporary pain, for a better future?
Thank you very much for this question. But first, I want to respond to what she said earlier. Yes, this is a new Nigeria. Reality has come to be, and we cannot take that away at this point. If there are two ways here that we are going to treat this issue of subsidy removal on the effects of cushioning it. One, the Nigerian populace, the Nigerian citizen has a role to play, because if you actually take analysis, or you go around and take statistics, you will see that we spend more on what we don't need. We need to differentiate our wants from our need. That is on the Nigerian citizens. You need to know how to manage the little resources you have, because we spend so much on waste. Then two, the government is doing their best. As the government just come to be, and plans are on the way. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is someone that has so much passion for the Nigerian people, and he's doing everything possible to see that these things are taken care of. Now, coming to the area of the information you mentioned, yes, the government is barely a week old. So we should not just start blaming or start accusing the government of not informing the people rightly and all that. The government is still forming. It's just sitting. The National Assembly is about to be inaugurated. Then it can settle well to address various challenges, economic challenges, security challenges, and all that. Because the subsidy is like what is closer to us. That is why we feel it so much. They said in the spiritual realm, there are so many forces, but the witchcraft is closer to human being. So you are more afraid of the witch.
As much as that is easy to understand, the issues, what you have raised, my apologies, you know, what you have raised, as significant as that is, there are a number of people who wonder, well, the government didn't settle in before announcing that subsidy is gone. And now Nigerians have to settle in to that challenge. So the understanding that Madam is asking for, I think is very important for people to buy into it, and as many appeals have been made, support government. But let me come to Madam Koyoto. You know, there's this report out there from KPMG that says in response to the PMS subsidy removal by government, pump prices in the Republic of Benin almost doubled from 450 CFA to 800 CFA, underscoring the widespread belief that significant quantities of subsidized PMS were smuggled out of Nigeria into neighboring countries, also underscoring that statement by the president that he's not going to pay for the fuel use in other countries at the expense of Nigerians. How do you factor that sacrifice, so to speak, into the scheme of things now? Because the black market in these other countries close to Nigeria are thriving at the expense of Nigeria. How do you reconcile that with the issues we're having on our hands?
Oh, absolutely. I don't see a contradiction at all. This is a country that has managed 2 exchange rates. You remember, we have the official exchange rate and the non-official exchange rate. The opportunity that exists, again, remember, we're not saying that we shouldn't remove the PMS. We're saying that the implications of removing should have been thought about and thought through before the actual removal. And that the implications of what has happened and that pronouncement is that this is a policy that doesn't care about the citizens of the country. It's taken a position which will hurt and damage a lot of households. I mean, you must remember again that this is coming on the back of COVID that decimated a lot of businesses, coming on the back of the currency swap, the failed currency swap that affected several more businesses, and now you have this. So a lot of small businesses are going to either just disappear or become non-existent because of these badges that have happened in the last couple of months. So back to the point about what's happening in the neighboring country. It's an opportunity. It's absolutely an opportunity. And in terms of being an opportunity, it doesn't stop you from having 2 regimes. Monies that oil that is going across the border has to cost more. Let the neighboring countries pay more. I still think it is a function of government to be able to do so. I mean, part of what we should be doing, and that comes to things like the stolen oil theft and all sorts of things, you know. There's so many things going on there, none of which we've talked about. How do we deal with the supply end that will crash the price of the commodity? So the point I'm making in question is that there is absolutely nothing wrong with neighboring countries having to pay more. Citizens of this country are citizens primarily, and what affects us should not be judged on the basis of what is happening across the border. The business of what is happening across the border is the business of what is happening across the border. We must have ways in which government deals with that, because that is smuggling. That is smuggling, and somebody is enabling that. If that wasn't being enabled, we wouldn't have that situation. What we are saying is, what is the story for your citizens? And I hear you talk about communication. I'm sorry to differ later, this subsidy is going to enter every household. Every household is going to feel the impact of it. It's not a communication thing. It is something that will hurt and hurt families badly.
So CSO is going to protest since Labour has put it on hold for now?
But what we are saying to the country is that what we've seen come out of the negotiations that have taken place in the last couple of days between the TUC and the NLC doesn't cover the rest of us. It only talks about what the organized labor wants to see. Of course, we're making a demand and we're asking. We're being sensitive to the fact that something has to happen and hopeful that these negotiations that will go on will open the door for many more actors. I would like to sit with the daughter of the president to ask her what's going to happen to the market women, for example. That's an important negotiation that needs to happen.
All right, Honorable Nkoto, Chief Spokesperson, Co-Convener, Labour and Civil Society Front, former Nigerian ambassador to Ethiopia and former member of the House of Representatives, along with Dr. Odiapo Obire, member of the APC and President, Good Leadership Advocacy for Africa. Thank you both for coming on today.
Thank you.
We will continue our conversation on this same subject matter. We've got two of those persons who are leading negotiations on the other side. We'll talk about that in a moment. Stay with us.